If the world was getting ripped apart by savage monsters from underground, what would you do? Horrifying alien creatures have begun rising from the deepest parts of the Earth's core and will stop at nothing to kill and sacrifice you and your friends. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the monsters in Gamera Rebirth. These kids have no idea that they will be hunted down and sacrificed by monsters and humans. Boko here spends time with his friends. Before moving away after summer vacation, living in a military town, they head to their secret clubhouse and talk about buying a radio, so they can all stay in touch when he leaves. Finally saving enough pocket money, they head to the store to buy it, but run into the school bully. This American kid named Brody says his dad is the general at the local military base, and he makes fun of Boko's friends and their country. Him and his gang try to steal all of their money and kick their asses. Later, Boko complains to them that they need to get their money back so they can buy their radio, because staying friends forever is really the most important thing they can do right now. Convincing the others, they plan to attack them later that night for revenge, not realizing that horrifying monsters will attack this city and the world in just a few hours. Later, Boko and his friends track down the school bullies in town, not hearing the city's evacuation sirens going off in the distance. They head into the arcade and challenge Brody and his friends to a fight, but that's when a huge rumble erupts inside of the arcade. It's coming from outside, and they go to check it out. Seeing a huge fire in the distance, fighter jets fly past them. Boko's friend Juinichi notices that they're F-15 Eagles, but Brody wonders why they are flying so low to the city and why they are flying faster than normal. Seeing the afterburners, he gets worried and thinks it is a sign that their city is under attack. Everyone rushes to a nearby rooftop to take a closer look at what's going on, but that's when they see something horrifying. Jets fighting terrifying monsters, firing missiles, and getting absolutely slaughtered. Dozens of civilians get eaten in plain sight. It's beautiful. I didn't say that. But the kids can't make out who the enemy is. Boko then feels a strange surge of energy within his body and doesn't know what's going on. No one else notices though. And that's when this flesh-eating monster appears behind them, ready to kill. Okay, well, it might seem like we are screwed. I would get out of this situation by relying on social deductive reasoning, sensitive hearing, and a little bit of Nando's chicken. Let me explain. Before this monster showed up, everyone clearly heard the low rumble in the arcade. From that fact alone, it means that the explosion was at least 15 kilometers away. Currently, these kids are in Fusa City, Japan, an area known for its American Air Force Base and primarily a residential suburb that houses workers working in Tokyo. The point is, there are no nuclear facilities or anything crazy that could create such an explosion like the one we just heard, except the Air Force Base. But if that's the case, then it could mean three likely scenarios. Either an accident happened at the Air Force Base that caused the explosion, which is unlikely, or some attack happened to the Air Force Base, or an attack happened within the city of Fusa, and this is what caused the Air Force Base to react to the threat and deploy weapons of some kind to it. This means that due to deductive reasoning and the close proximity to the threat already, there was absolutely no reason to go up to the building just now. Instead, they should have just ran in the opposite direction, because that's the smarter plan, and figured out the full situation at a later point from a safer distance. They wasted precious time risking their lives, which got them here. If I was Boko here, at this point we gotta deal with this Nando-looking mofo without killing it. Well, we're prepubescent as hell. However, we do have options. We're surrounded by a group of our peers, and not just any peers. We're around military brats. An average military brat due to their, unique experiences growing up in international military bases. And that means that these kids are packing with useful abilities. Abilities and skills that we could use now that we're clearly in the apocalypse. This means that I would keep one or two of these military brats, since their skills, could come in handy. I would also keep Juinichi here, since he's a big old nerd about a whole lot of stuff, but I would 100% push Joe and maybe one or two of Brody's friends straight into Mr. Nando over here, because their shields of meat will give me time to escape. During the descent, I would also try to activate the fire alarm in order to throw off the monster's orientation. The children run for their lives, and Boko's gang splits up from Brody. The monster shoots its lethal tail at them, but accidentally gets electrocuted. Reaching the ground floor, another monster catches them from the front, and another from the back traps them into a corner. About to die, a huge energy blast blows through the arcade, killing every monster inside. The kids are shocked and don't know what the hell just happened. Heading outside, they realize who their savior is, this turtle monster, and they can't believe their eyes. The biggest creature they've ever seen standing in front of them, and it stares at them right in the face. More monsters begin attacking this giant creature, but Boko and his friends witness their savior's awesome power. Suddenly, Boko's gang notices more trouble nearby, forcing the kids to leave the area. Brody trips trying to get away, and another monster tries to come at them, but gets brutally crushed by their their new monster friend. Trapped around the destruction, the kids watch this OG kill the last of the red monsters, blinding this one and slamming it into the floor. But that's when this turtle monster gets hit by dozens of American missiles, forcing it to do the impossible, deploying its wings and taking off into the sky. Feeling connected to the monster in some superhuman way, Boko tells his friends that their savior's name is Gamera. Suddenly, a helicopter lands near them, and this scientist comes out and approaches the kids, introducing herself as Emiko. She says they want to ask them questions about the monsters that they just saw, because they've been tracking them for a long time. She tells them that the monster that just tried to kill them is named Gyaos, and nothing is what it seems. Taking the kids to their local military base, they meet Brody's hard-ass dad, General Osborn, and he pimp-slapped Brody and gets mad at him for missing football practice earlier that day because heaven forbid the world ends. A man then enters the room wearing a suit. He introduces himself as Tazaki and tells the kid that him and Emiko work for the Eustace Foundation, a powerful worldwide company that specializes in developing energy resources for the world, and he flexes on them a little bit that they recently put a human base on the moon. They give the kids the rundown of what's really going on. The UN ordered them to go up against these monsters known as Kaiju, but their company accidentally found their first Kaiju 10 years ago, deep beneath the ocean seabed in a cavern, and it's been perfectly preserved and is at least 100,000 years old. But that's when Emiko reveals something shocking. They discovered human remains inside of the monster's stomach and have found other caverns around the world, and that's when they discovered the Kaiju known as Gyaos. Tazaki tells them that Kaiju monsters worldwide have started eating children for some unknown reason, and they also don't know how the turtle monster they saw fits into the whole picture. But they think it's no coincidence that both of these monsters fought near these kids, and they think they are somehow connected. They then hand the kids these fancy communicators and tell them that these will let the military keep track of their location and vital signs until they can stop these attacks around the world, because that's what secret organizations do. Tazaki then says something strange and warns them to contact them if they're ever in any danger or if they feel something strange within their bodies. And with their help, they'll be able to save the entire world, making everyone except Joe excited as hell. The next day, Tazaki and Emiko rush to meet the General Osborn because something horrifying has just happened. The general tells them that they spotted baby Kaiju escaping the military base into the sewers, and have now just gotten reports that full-sized adult Kaiju have started attacking the city. Emiko and Tazaki are shocked at the news, but for a different reason. They confess to the general that they were keeping ancient Kaiju eggs at the base to do experiments on, but up until just last night, they were completely fossilized. Not knowing how these monsters came to life, General Osborn orders all of his men to head out to hunt the Kaiju down. Meanwhile, Boko and his friends go to meet up with Brody because he has apparently some urgent news, and he tells them that earlier this morning, he overheard his general dad on the phone saying that baby Kaiju had escaped into the sewers, and they were only the size of puppies at the time. And good old Brody has the most brilliant idea. It says that they should go hunt down the baby Kaiju down before the military does. This way, they can look like badasses on their way to certain doom. Amazing. Fortunately, Joe says this plan is dumb as hell, because it is. But Boko tells him that the military did say they needed their help, and so wannabe scientist Junichi agrees. And then everybody peer pressures Joe to join in. Heading inside, they follow monster tracks into this huge tunnel, and everybody says that they can secure this tunnel until the military gets there. But Joe gets worried for Boko and says that being here is a huge mistake. Brody tells him to stop being a little biatch, and then they get into an argument, but that's when they hear a huge rumble and realize that this rock right next to them is actually a massive Kaiju. Silenced by pure terror, they try to back away slowly, but their military communicator starts picking up radio chatter, oh how typical, making the Kaiju notice, and it attacks. The military then busts in and starts firing, giving the kids a chance to escape. Outside, they run into Emiko and Tazaki, and they tell the kids that they track them down using their communicator devices, and they need to get out of here now because Gamera is headed right for them. A massive explosion takes place inside the sewers, and everyone outside sees the massive Kaiju erupt from the surface. The military quickly provides cover fire, and this group gets the hell out of there. In the car, Tazaki tells them what this monster is, codenamed Giger. He says they discovered this Kaiju before Gyaos appeared, and they've been investigating its eggs for the past year. But he doesn't know how they grew suddenly and why now. A car then crashes into them and disables their ride. Getting out, they see Giger in the distance, when all of a sudden, another energy blast blows through the area and Gamera appears. It quickly tries to stop Giger, but gets stabbed by its lethal tail, injuring it. Gamera tries to attack again, but gets fired upon by incoming fighter jets. The kids watch helplessly from the distance, and Boko is horrified. Sensing that Gamera is somehow on their side, he has an idea and tries to convince Brody to save Gamera through his his general dad. Tazaki thinks he's crazy, but Brody finally listens and calls his dad. Reluctantly, his pops listens, and just then, Giron in the distance stabs Gamera a third time and knocks him down. Vulnerable, it gets ready to kill Gamera just as it gets stopped by fighter jets. Boku realizes that they managed to do it, and Gamera gets back up, quickly hitting up its claw, and it forcefully picks up Giron and burns its body alive, and then it just takes off again into the sky. Later, Brody's dad reaches the group of kids, but slaps Brody in front of everyone, telling him to not be irresponsible with his life ever again. He gets sad, but Joe tries to cheer him up, and he quickly becomes friends with the group, and none of them have no idea that something much more horrifying has just escaped and is headed their way 100 miles east in the South Pacific Deep Sea. The next day, the Foundation tells Tazaki and Emiko that they have collected and are analyzing more flesh samples, and they found more Aurelium, a mysterious energy that powers and amplifies energy from all kaiju. Because of this new development, they order these two to escort the children to their excavation site at Yonaguni Island by boat in order for the next phase of their plan to start. Convincing all of the children's parents, even somehow Brody's dad, they tell everybody that these kids will be needed to save the world, and they trick everybody into letting them go, and they all set off by boat. Later, Emiko gives the kids a tour of the ship. They find out it's packing some serious heat. She reveals to them that they are also carrying an Aurelium crystal and are using it to try to find different races of kaiju present on Earth. Tazaki butts in and tells Emiko that he's got bad news. A new kaiju has just sunk a ship 250 kilometers from them, codenamed Zigra. The ship was carrying other kids who encountered the Gyaos kaiju, but now they're all dead. They discuss the grave news with members from the Foundation and suspect their ship will be the monster's next target. And that's when Tazaki freaks his boobs off and goes to tell the captain to get them to the Yonaguni Island as soon as possible. Outside, the kids overhear on the communication device about the recent ship explosion and begin freaking out. Junichi then tries to calm them down with some math. He says that the attack happened around 10,000 kilometers away, and if the creature was traveling 100 knots, then it won't reach them for another 2 days, and they should reach their destination by tomorrow night. Everybody lets out a sigh of relief. Junichi then suggests that all kaiju may belong to some sort of ancient civilization based on what he's noticed, but they all think he's just being a nerd. Okay, this plan makes no sense, and this could have been obvious due to common sense. Let me explain. There's no possible way that Junichi can tell how fast a kaiju would travel. How would he know? For context, the fastest sea animal in the world is the sailfish. It's able to move as quick as a cheetah but in water at 82 miles an hour or around 71 knots. And I don't have to be a scientist to assume that a giant monster could probably travel way faster than, a sailfish, probably way more than 100 knots. Either way, it makes no sense why they are taking a boat in the first place, when it's noted that the trip between where they left, the airbase, to Yonaguni Island takes 2 days by boat, which is around 2,000 kilometers apart. You would think that with the world ending and them needing to get a little bit of a move on, that they would have picked a faster mode of transportation. Look, it's possible that they're taking a boat since it's carrying a valuable Aurelium crystal, and maybe it's too fragile to transport any other way, but transporting both the valuable crystal and the kids, which they apparently need to save the world, is stupid as hell, especially when they now know that another ship like theirs carrying children similar to Boku and crew just got taken down last night. But let's say even before this other disaster happened, traveling by boat should have been the last option. By definition, a kaiju is characterized as a force of nature. If I was them, I would have gone to Yonaguni Island way faster by putting the kids on a flight from Tokyo to Okinawa Islands, since we could have gotten there in under 3 hours. And then we could have either taken a boat from Okinawa to Yonaguni, which would have taken 10 hours and 45 minutes. This would have been a better countermeasure than relying on the kaiju not being faster than a freaking sailfish. Unbelievable. Later that night, the alarm blasts throughout the ship, and everybody receives the worst news of all. The Zigra kaiju has caught up to them and is coming at them with the equivalent speed of a missile, reaching them in 10 minutes. Firing a kinetic energy missile, the captain quickly dodges the monster's lethal shot, and they see on their radar that the kaiju has now gotten even faster. The ship launches another counter missile at Zigra, landing it right near it, and it explodes in the face, allowing the captain enough time to whip out their secret weapon, launching their EM propulsion. He says this this ship flying at unheard speeds, and the gang tries to reach their island as soon as possible. Another siren sounds off, and they see that Zigra is still alive, and is now traveling faster than they've ever seen one go, wrapping itself in bubbles to help minimize water resistance. Finally out of options, Captain says they need to switch to Plan B. Tazaki's eyes go wide, and he refuses to go along with the job anymore. He tries to retreat to the helicopter, and Boko's group follows him, confused as hell. Nearing the bird, they finally see their impending doom, and Zigra incoming. Blasting out of the water, Gamera finally shows up again out of nowhere and protects them again, fighting this water demon. Emiko quickly guides them back into the ship for Plan B. Traveling below deck, they head into the submarine, and the captain reports that the two kaiju are now 1,000 kilometers away from them, meaning now's their chance. Detaching, they drop deeper and deeper into the ocean, barely escaping the ship's explosion above them. Meanwhile, Gamera gets into a dogfight with Zigra and quickly gets overpowered, sending a shockwave into the ocean and gets picked up by their submarine. Reading on the radar that Gamera is down and Zigra is hot on their tail, and that's when they realize that they won't make it to the island. Thinking fast, they stop the engines and hide out below these sea rocks, quickly firing a missile in the distance, and they see that Zigra goes right for it. Junichi then thinks that it might be using echolocations just like dolphins, and the shock from fighting Gamera has now messed up its sense of direction, and that he has a crazy idea, and he tells everyone that if they lure Zigra on land, then maybe Gamera might have a chance. And he finds out from this one sailor that the submarine recorded the signal Gamera transmitted moments ago. Using this, they think they could replicate the signal and disorient Zigra enough to help Gamera kill it. The captain thinks he's crazy, but Junichi says that they can lure it to a nearby radio tower that they can use to set off that signal. The captain then mentions that there happens to be one of them nearby, and reluctantly he agrees to play ball. The captain tells these kids that they'll have to drop them off on the island alone, since protecting the Aurelium is their top priority. Tazaki and Emiko reluctantly then take the kids off of the ship, and it crashes onto the islands, and everyone quickly makes a move to reach the radio station. Okay, this is madness. We would have been able to figure out Zigra Kaiju's weakness by looking at how wet he is and where he originally grew up. Let me explain. While this is a solid plan, knowing the stakes at hand, I would have prepared a better T-bone combo of a second plan. At this point, we know that Zigra Kaiju is aquatic in nature, and since Kaiju were found within the Earth's crust deep below, I believe it would be then safe to say that this creature would have acted much like other deep-sea creatures out there, including similar weaknesses since they also have been living down there. In order to survive in a harsh, dark environment, most deep-sea organisms have evolved to possess a highly specialized visual system, which makes them sensitive to small amounts of light found within that environment. This genetic trait makes deep-sea organisms vulnerable to sunlight and bright lights in general, and since we've now known about this deep-sea kaiju for 2 days from the moment it was first sighted, which means that it would have been possible for the military to mobilize action plans designed to exploit this very likely possible weakness within the Zigra Kaiju. For example, the sun or fire, since it's also safe to assume that the opposite of water is fire, because every water creature would be susceptible to heat. We could have even notified the US military base that just so happens to be close by their location. Realizing none of their men are there to escort them, they haul ass by foot, just as Zigra pops out from the water in the distance and comes right at them. Rushing in, they work together to quickly turn on the radio, emitting a piercing signal. It hits Zigra and it collapses and loses its sense of direction for a split second. And that's when Boko gets hit with the worst headache, and Gamera blasts out from the water. Taking terrifying hits, it overpowers Zigra and blasts it with radiation, killing it and saving the kids yet again, and then it heads back into the ocean, leaving everybody confused as to what this giant creature's motives might be. And they extract another Aurelium crystal. Another ship then enters the harbor, and everybody gets news that they will be continuing their horrifying journey to Yonaguni on this boat. But a little bit later, Tazaki and Emiko then notice that more weird shit has started to happen to their kaiju samples. They've now started to regenerate. Noticing the Aurelium crystal nearby, they wonder if it's giving off some sort of radiation that is healing the flesh of any kaiju nearby, and they're unaware that a new kaiju has just risen to the surface right near them. A few days later, the kids finally reach the Yonaguni base, the most cutting-edge facility in the world. But Joe then starts getting impatient and calls Emiko out. He says they were supposed to be back home days ago, and it's still unclear what the Foundation really wants with them. Emiko apologizes and says that some new developments have just happened, and they're running out of time if they want to save the world with the kids that they need. The other kids try to calm Joe down, and Boko says that Gamera will protect them, but Joe thinks he's just being naive. Emiko interrupts and tells them that once they go through all of their tests, they will finally be able to relax. Meanwhile, inside, Tazaki calls the Foundation for some answers, because things are no longer making any sense. He asks them why certain children have started to get attacked by kaiju, and what's Aurelium got to do with kaiju flesh. But the bosses tell him that he should only be concerned with the company's 3 priorities: to find out how to attack the kaiju, to figure out how they can create the energy that sustains their bodies, and to make sure humanity is protected from them. And they warn him that he knew about the risks and the secrecy of the job when they hired him. Meanwhile, Boko and his friends go through all sorts of strange tests, and Emiko assures them though that everything is fine and that they're just looking for abnormalities within their blood. And Joe starts getting agitated and asks Emiko why aren't they telling them the full picture. Boko tells Joe to stop always whining, and Emiko tries to change the topic and decides to show them what's hiding underneath their base and what it's all really about. Heading below, she unveils the first kaiju they ever discovered, codenamed Viras, over 100,000 years old. They've never found any other kaiju fossil, and she explains to them that Aurelium is the life force behind all kaiju. When it loses its energy, the molecular structure of its flesh and bones decompose at accelerated rates. This, in their view, is the daddy of all kaiju, different from the rest they've ever fought. Tazaki then enters annoyed as hell, and he demands to speak to Emiko in private, forcing her to drop these kids off at their rooms to chill. Boku and these 3 get amazed by all the cool stuff, but Joe says that all of this is off. Outside, Tazaki tells Emiko that he just found out that another kaiju has been spotted where they fought the last one, and it's eaten all of Zigra's body, and is now probably headed right for them. He wants to know why didn't the Foundation tell them this on the call. Emiko then tries to calm him down, but he tells her that no, this is his last straw. He's quitting his job and will leave when the next transport helicopter arrives. Shocking Emiko. Makes her a little bit sad. Well, too bad for her, because that was his biggest mistake. Back inside of their rooms, Joe discovers that the front door is now locked. Shocked, he tries to tell the group that he was right about this place, but Boko says that he trusts Emiko and everything that they're trying to do. Joe tries to put his foot down, but Boko angrily tells him that he should stop treating him like his dead brother. Joe gets pissed off because his brother died, sad backstory, but is not bored, and decides to leave the room by himself. Junichi joins him and says that there's something else he wants to see. The 2 then escape through the ventilation shafts, while Boko and Brody stay put, but their peace is cut short when a part of the base detects a rumble underground. Emiko goes to check it out, and she discovers that a huge seismic wave has just occurred beneath the seabed, and they don't know why. Nearby, Tazaki waits with his partner and finally spots his helicopter coming to save him. Landing, the water beneath them gets violent, and something huge shoots out from below, slicing the helicopter and the landing pad, and this strange creature launches itself onto the base, forcing everyone to realize what they're up against. Codenamed Giron, Emiko sees through the cameras and tells everybody that they need to seal off the cylinder and keep this creature away from the virus kaiju, while she tells everyone to evacuate and radios Tazaki that he needs to take command of the remaining troops because they have no one else. Frustrated and trapped, Tazaki agrees, but quickly remembers that nobody's watching the kids. Meanwhile, Boko stares death right through his window and rushes to try and call Joe and Junichi, but their device isn't working and they're still trapped in this room. Desperate, these 2 also try and escape through the ventilation shafts. Back at Fusa military base, General Osborne then gets notified that Yonaguni mining base, where his son is, has been attacked by another kaiju. Meanwhile, in the meantime, Boko and Brody somehow finally meet up with Joe and Junichi, just as Giron attacks their building, splitting these 2 up and forces them to come face to face with the kaiju itself. But that's when Gamera suddenly appears oh so conveniently again and knocks back Giron. The 2 will duel it out, making the kids realize that Boko was right. Gamera is protecting them, missing his buddy. Joe uses this opportunity to go find Boko. The 2 kaijus battle to the death, but Gamera realizes that this monster is faster than the rest, and it manages to cut off Gamera's arm clean off, causing Boko to somehow feel the pain as well. Joe hears this and locates him, and the 2 make up, and everybody then tries to get to the bottom floors. Heading inside of this lift, it suddenly breaks and sends them crashing down to the basement. Giron outside manages to stab Gamera, causing him to collapse onto the floor, but that's when something crazy happens. Its body starts powering up, and its shell starts spinning at light speed. Gaining air, it flies at Giron and tries to attack it, quickly pulling up a slick move and slicing right up Giron's monster body, killing it dead, and winning the next kaiju battle. A few minutes later, the kids wake up inside of the lift and realize they are now in the basement where the virus kaiju is being held. There they spot an Aurelium crystal in front of them and notice that the case was destroyed on impact. Strange, and Boku touches it, causing a horrifying visual to appear around them. They discover discover an ancient civilization known as the Foundation, an organization that tried to purify the world by creating kaijus. Wanting only the chosen ones to survive, they sacrificed special children in order to gain control of these monsters. But Gamera stopped them and saved the world. Suddenly, the visual ends, and they see Emiko's men coming right for them. Meanwhile, on the moon, the Foundation board members sit and discuss their evil plans to purify the world from the safety of their moon base. But then they realize that the last few food shipments that they were supposed to receive from the orbit station has never arrived, and they worry if their second in command, Emiko, has betrayed them. But this one board member says that she would never betray her people. Back on Earth, Tazaki helps everyone rebuild the base, but comes across Emiko, and she tells them that they don't have time to save people and must focus on the main mission, because that's the only thing that matters. Tazaki thinks it's a little sus, and she's acting kinda evil, and they get word that the children have been found. She takes Tazaki to go see the kids now drugged up and helpless, and Tazaki finally realizes the horrifying truth. He finds out that Emiko actually wants to use these kids in order to revive the horrifying virus Kaiju, and this Kaiju will wipe out most of humanity. She's actually really evil. Tazaki questions her and says that the mission was to protect the children, but she says she has no time for questions and threatens to kill him, but if he helps her, he'll be taken care of. Taking this opportunity, he says he will help her be evil if he gets a cut of the organization when they reach the moon. She agrees and reveals to him that feeding the children to virus will give her the ability to control it. She's double-crossing the Foundation board too, shocking Tazaki, because this baddie is playing both sides. Tazaki then leaves to go help out her minions and get ready the revival process, while Emiko gets word that her men have stopped the last 2 food shipments to the moon base. Soon, all of the board members will become weak and desperate, and then she'll be able to take over the moon base. Nearby, Tazaki pulls his weight and runs into Dario, and he tells him that he's surprised he's joining them in their super evil mission. But Tazaki says he wants to fulfill his dreams of going to the moon. Dario laughs, says that it's possible that Emiko is lying to him, and has no plans to save him when they escape to the orbit station, and then the moon, since everyone he sees in this room will also be left to die when virus awakens. He then gets sent by Emiko to go check on the kids now trapped in this room, but there he discovers from the kids that Emiko doesn't just want to wipe out most of the world. She wants to destroy the entire planet. Once virus eats the chosen child among the sacrificed children, it will lose control and begin to devour the entire human race. And Tazaki finally realizes that Emiko is on a mission to destroy the entire world, and Tazaki tells them in response to this information to shut their mouths and get ready to die, and leaves them in this room. Back in the revival room, Emiko puts their Aurelium crystal near the virus Kaiju, and they watch as it regenerates. The man says it will come alive in 1 hour. On the clock, she orders Tazaki and Dario to carry and drop old Kaiju flesh onto virus, helping it to regenerate faster. Emiko notices Tazaki's discomfort and says that the chosen will survive virus's massacre. She tells him that years ago, her ancestors from the Foundation were betrayed by some of their own kind. They created Gamera to stop them from purifying the world. The computers then notice virus regenerating way too fast, and they now say that it will wake up in 20 minutes. They try to drag the kids into their sacrificial cage, but they break free last minute and try to escape, needing them alive for the process. Tazaki gets sent after them, but then him and Dario actually help them escape, revealing to the kids that they were actually on their side because, well, Emiko is nuts. Virus then starts regenerating even faster, freaking Emiko out, and she tries to escape, leaving behind 2 of her men in the process. Heading out, they realize that Tazaki and crew have stolen their escape vehicle and head to the control tower to try and stop them. Inside of the ship, Dario gets ready to take off, but suddenly Virus blasts outside of the facility and sends his tentacles to stop them. Barely managing to escape, they blast off last minute. Thinking they're safe, they take a quick breather, but that's when the ship gets blasted, instantly killing Dario and knocking Tazaki unconscious. Using its massive energy beam, Virus tries to go after them, but Gamera blasts out of the ocean and starts firing energy blasts, coming in with an attack. Virus quickly overpowers Gamera and knocks him out. Now free, it begins controlling gravity and uses it to fly right at Boko. Hearing them, it suddenly sees Gamera alive and coming right for it. It tries to defend itself, but Gamera quickly blocks its attacks and slices right through the world's greatest monster. Back in the space shuttle, the kids save Tazaki and head to one of the escape pods, but realize it's stuck. They need someone to stay behind to unlock it from the inside. Joe then mans up and gets out to unjam the jam and says goodbye to Boko, and he dies in a fiery death. The space shuttle quickly descends back to Earth and lands on Emiko and her minion, causing this whole base to explode. Barely surviving, Emiko wobbles out, but then runs into another baby kaiju, and it rips her face off. Yes! Serves her right. Boko's crew then realizes that their rocket's parachute won't deploy, and suddenly Gamera catches them and carries them safely down to land. There, Boko realizes his pet monster is not breathing. Tazaki doesn't give two shits and tries to leave, but Boko and crew convince him to help him save Gamera, in case the Foundation tries to come after them, which is a very good possibility. He reluctantly agrees and calls his military contacts to try and save their greatest defender. Back on the moon, members of the Foundation see that Gamera's life signal is dead, but eagerly wait for their plan B to start. And this one member tells them not to worry, because another kaiju is alive, and soon will find the children and eat them, triggering the purification event. Back on Earth, Tazaki's military contacts tell him everything they know about the Foundation and their evil plans to use the kaiju to destroy humanity. He tells them that bringing Gamera back to life is their only hope of defense, under the condition that Gamera can be controlled. Convinced, the military rescues Gamera and recruit the world's greatest minds, and they try to figure out how to bring Gamera back to life. Tazaki shows them a piece of Aurelium crystal he stole and gives it to the scientists. But that's when Boko collapses and has another vision, seeing how the ancients healed Gamera. He tells them to put the Aurelium crystal near Gamera, triggering the other kids' memories of what they saw at the mining base. Drawing it, they tell the scientists that Emiko's men hung Aurelium right in front of Gamera's outer shell as a sound was then emitted. The scientists realize what they're trying to say, and then they get to work on saving Gamera. A few hours later, they finally manage to come up with a plan, putting the Aurelium crystal on top of Gamera's head with a currency cord attached. Turning it on, they see Gamera beginning to heal, but it's too late. Suddenly, an alarm goes off and they get reports that an unidentified object is headed straight for them. The military locks and loads and defends the beaches, and they spot their final opponent. Firing at this monster, they quickly realize that this one is different, and it quickly destroys all Navy ships and shoots energy lasers at the beach, destroying most of the human defenses in minutes. This tank commander identifies a weakness, and he orders his surviving soldiers to aim for its throat and head. Watching all of this, a massive headache suddenly hits Boko, and this monster charges up its most deadly laser beam yet, destroying the rest of the defense and leaving everybody helpless. Approaching Gamera, Boko suddenly has an idea to slow it down. Okay, we're so screwed, but if I was them, I would have saved the entire human race by sacrificing millions of innocent men, women, and children by utilizing the advantages of a landlocked country. Let me explain. This Gyaos is way more badass than the last one, which means that they should have been way more prepared. Because of this, the military should have never listened to Boko and instead should have questioned his abilities through a more rigorous scientific process. Because even if he was the chosen one, they never even bothered to question what that actually meant. In analyzing his brainwaves and through psychological examination, they could have come up with some sort of hypothesis behind how his powers or his connection with Gamera works. They never even once bothered to look into Boko's abilities to see if they could have leveraged them even more, unlike the bad guys who did this from the beginning. If I was the military at this point, I would have began treating these monsters individually and personally. Gyaos or Kaiju monsters, whatever you want to call them, look like they descend from lizards based on similar traits. Its eyes also have vertical pupils, which like lizards are designed to enhance the amount of light entering the eye. Certain subspecies of animals have slight differences. However, at the end of the day, these monsters are more similar enough where it counts, and they failed to recognize any of their obvious disadvantages. Saving Gamera was smart. They should have started thinking less with their heart and more with their mind. By transporting and fixing him up within a landlocked country, within a heavily crowded city, this would have forced the Gyaos to traverse far on land in order to reach us, which he would have been slow at, and by forcing him to come across millions of innocent civilians, this means that Gyaos Kaiju thing would have been distracted in killing millions of people before it reached Gamera, giving our best shot at saving the world and giving us precious time to recover and get back on our feet. Because millions of people dying in comparison to saving the whole world is a worthy sacrifice. Boko runs to try and get the thing's attention, luring it to the edge of this cliff, and he gets ready to kill him, but that's when Gamera blasts out of his holding and knocks it back. Boko realizes that he isn't fully recovered and is underpowered. He emits a massive energy and makes the monster collapse. About to kill him, the thing shoots a tentacle straight into Gamera's mouth, feeding him some unknown energy, quickly draining Gamera of his powers. About to die, it suddenly gets hit by blasts from multiple AC-130 planes coming in from the sky, led by General Daddy to save his son, knocking the thing back. A surviving tanker then provides cover fire from the distance, giving Gamera enough time to get back up. He rushes to pull out his signature move and transforms his shell into a spinning attack, deflecting all of the hits coming at it, and he kills the monster. The Foundation watches from the moon and smiles at the death, saying it's now time to switch to Plan C. They reveal that this one was able to inject inject an RNA virus into Gamera minutes ago. Because of this, Gamera will be forced to return to original genetic configuration, aka making it evil. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Boku now tries to approach Gamera, but see its eyes suddenly turn blood red, and everybody now worries he's now turned evil. Tazaki tells Boko to stay back, but he says that Gamera won't hurt them. He calls out to him and fires his little boy love at Gamera. Because of this, with the last bit of his strength, Gamera manages to reverse the evil code inside of him and turns good thanks to Boko's love. Oh, how cute. He then turns his attention towards the moon base and fires a magnificent energy blast straight into the Foundation's moon base, instantly destroying all of the board members. But this surge in power causes Gamera to use the last bit of his life force, and he kicks the bucket, leaving only behind the shining Aurelium rock. Saddened by the loss of their friend and giant monster, the world eventually goes back to normal, and everybody rescues the kids and they spend the last days of summer together. They meet up with Tazaki later and tells them that the UN has started to investigate the Foundation, and he'll be keeping an eye on them. They then go to the military base to go check on a baby Gamera in his test tube. They found it where Gamera died, and they get ready to take care of this kaiju and make it ready for the day when more monsters try to attack the world. But what do you guys think about the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a thumbs up down below. And as always, don't forget to check out our How to Be playlist.